Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Leadership Live. My name is Juby Harlow, and I'm here with a good friend and colleague, Lisa Linkowsky, who is a franchise consultant, a certified franchise consultant, and she's pretty awesome. Lisa, thank you so much for joining today. And yeah, so you have a very unique job that you don't hear. I mean, business slash job. You don't really hear that very often. That people are certified franchise consultant. I
No,
keep saying financial because
thank you. Thanks for having me on, Drew. I really, really appreciate it very much so. But you're right. I hear that all the time that people say they never heard of what I do. In fact, I wrote an article for Franchise Wire that I didn't know people like me existed. When I bought my franchise, I had no idea. So I didn't know I existed at one point.
right, and then that's got to be like an existential kind of a mess there, but tell us more about what do you do to serve your clients, and how do you get into that?
Yeah. So I've been in franchising for 10 years, and I was a franchise owner, a franchisee for a good amount of that time. And I was one of the first to come on board. And so I helped to build this concept across the country, which was a phenomenal ride, and mentoring and coaching and training and cheerleading, because when you're one of the first 10 in the business, you're that core 10. And sadly, the business went up in flames across the country in March 2020. So 3 years coming up. It ended overnight. And I had thought about going into franchise consulting when I had sold my business, and life had other plans for me. So instead, I created my business, Milestone Franchising, in the height of the pandemic. And yeah, that's quite insane, but that's okay. And what I do is I am a matchmaker for people that want to get into franchise business ownership. And I represent over 500 concepts. I belong to a broker network, the IFPG, the International Franchise Professionals Group, that gives me access to all these different types of concepts that I then can whittle down in my process when I'm speaking to someone about the different things that they're looking for, and what's going to drive them, passion wise, what do they have financially, mentally, their mental acuity of what it is that they've got that's going to get them out of bed to do this every day. And then we come to a point where I say, okay, here's some concepts that I think are really good for you. And I present those concepts. If I feel like they're going to be good for business ownership. And I know you want to dive more into that as well.
Absolutely, no, you definitely anticipated my next question, which is that that line between ready or not ready, and again, it's obviously probably a very gray line, but there is a difference between folks who are ready for business ownership and those who are not. And so, you and I have talked about this a couple times now, but when you're talking to somebody, what do you use to evaluate that for them? How do you say, like, hey, listen, I know you think you want to own a business, but you're really not ready for this.
Yeah, it's not meant for everybody. And, so many people have fled the corporate world during everything that has happened over the past 3 years. They've taken a hard look in the mirror and they've said, this isn't what I want anymore. They want to create their own destiny. And so business ownership sounds great. However, just like owning a house or going to college, it's not something that's meant for everybody. And so I really tried to dive in to explore that with them. And often we come to the realization that, yeah, no, they need to be in corporate America. I'll give you a great example. I have a candidate I was speaking to, and he is miserable. He's hating every day of his life and where he's at right now with his business. And I can relate to that because I had a similar experience at a job at one point. And I said to him, has it ever occurred to you you're not in the right field? And because he's super engaging, and he's got a light inside of him, and what he's doing currently is completely isolating, not with people, looking at a screen. And I'm like, no, you need to be out with people. And I gave him an assessment that I have. And sure enough, that's exactly what the assessment showed. So I said, right now, you can't do business ownership financially. However, go get a job that you can end up loving. Go forth and go find that, right? So you've got that piece where they don't have the financials. Then you have the piece where they don't have the intestinal fortitude, I like to call it. or the grit of what this is gonna take. If they're very much worried about, how many vacations that they can take a year, and that they're just looking at putting their pinky finger into this or their pinky toe, but they're not looking to be all in. That's red flags like all over the place, because I'm like, no, 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 this is business ownership, and you need to be all in 100%. There's no like, maybe, like, if in order to be successful, this is an all in venture. And right now, everything is all about passive, 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 passive investments, passive this, passive that. And there's very few concepts that are truly passive. If there were, you and I would both be, living in our life on a yacht somewhere, right? It doesn't work
Yeah.
like that. You have to build it, make it happen, make it that success, and and go forth. But yeah, having that hard discussion with someone that they just really don't have, let's say, business development skills, that's one of the key areas that I look at. They're a big introvert, and, going out and doing networking all day long is not in their bandwidth, and now they'd have to hire someone. And now you're looking at how much further cash flowing is going to happen because you have to hire someone. And it's, you've got to be the face of that business. No one's going to care as much as you. No one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you said a lot of things right just now that I think people need to go back and listen to. If you missed any of what you just said, or if you're curious, go back and watch the last like minute and a half of what Lisa was saying, because it's absolutely true. There's so much nonsense out there. Ever since, I mean, before the pandemic too, but when the pandemic happened, this, like, I feel like marketing wise, things exploded on ads, on like, oh, be a passive this, do this, do that, and here's how you build passive income. And if you watch, and I've watched some of the video just because I'm curious what this person's going to say, because I know it's BS, right? But I'm just curious what spin on BS they want to give. And it's always like, oh yeah, in 2 hours you can do that, and it's the clickbait, right? It's like in 2 hours you can change your life and have a $10,000 a month income. And then when you watch the video, it's always like, yeah, there's 2 hours of actual setup, but there's like 6 or 7 months of whatever you have to do before that. And it's like, okay, even 6 to 7 months is very, very conservative, right? Anyone who runs their own business knows it's never easy. It's not like a set and forget situation. There's no such thing in business as like set it and forget it. Maybe like a Bitcoin ATM is one of those things you might want to do that's like set it and forget it. But even that, you need to have a significant amount of capital for that kind of thing. But what you said is extremely important. That intestinal fortitude, that grit, that I call it resolve, right? That ability to go out there and keep pounding the pavement every single day, and going out there, whether out there means on the computer networking, or whether it means going out to networking events and meeting people in person. But you got to do it because it's your business and no one's going to care as much as you do, right? And I've been there. I've looked for all the shortcuts. They don't exist, right? They're not out there. They're expensive. They're very expensive lessons that you can absolutely learn for yourself. But I've wasted a lot of money learning them for you. Don't do it. I love what you said about that, because again, people don't think about that. They think, oh, it's just going to be a quick, buy this thing turnkey situation, and then suddenly I'll have a lot of cash flow coming in. And like you said, if it was that easy, we'd all be doing that, right? It's not that easy, and people don't understand that there's a real challenge and there's a real work ethic you need to have with business ownership, and it's just not going to happen for you unless you make it happen, right? So what do you think the biggest thing with that is, in terms of that, like the people you've seen successful, right? Even the people you may have thought would be successful, right? What have you seen them do that's different? Even the folks who maybe you thought like, oh, this person is going to really have a challenge, but if they really want to overcome that challenge, here's what they did.
So I think listening and taking in what it is that I'm saying, and learning, and not trying to pretend like you know it all, right? Because that is an issue.
Yep.
Listening and doing the process, because this is all a process. Franchising is a process, and working with someone like me is a process. So, doing everything, following through, listening to what I'm saying, following through, coming back, asking really great questions, looking at the bigger picture. Everyone, a lot of times people are just focused on the money. And I go, yeah, okay, let's say that you were that Powerball winner that just, came forward yesterday, and, money was not the issue. don't you want to know what the concept is, and do the people enjoy what it is that they're doing, and what the structure's like, what's the culture like you want to know all of it. You don't want to just know one piece of it. So the people that I find are most successful are the ones that come into this clean slate, open, and they are just willing to just take whatever is thrown at them and take it on, embrace it, and figure it out. And if they make mistakes, they're going to dust themselves off. Maybe you've got, have to get out some big bandages sometimes and, put some pressure on that wound, but you keep on going. Look back, see what you did wrong, learn from it, but keep on going. No matter what, you got to just keep on going. And, we just went through a once in a lifetime, knock on wood, pandemic that no one knew was going to happen. But that doesn't mean that you don't know what's around the next corner. And you know what was around the next corner? We were just taking our first fresh, deep breaths of air and no masks. And, we think we're in an endemic. And then a war was declared over, on the other side of the world here. And that threw things into chaos. And that's business ownership, where you go from this corner to that corner and then around, and you just don't know what's coming. And listen, been a business owner for 10 years. I'm a third generation business owner. There's great highs and there are epic lows. I was just saying that, like sometimes gut wrenching, fetal position lows, but I would never trade it for anything. Would you?
No,
right? And
absolutely
that's
not.
that's the difference. And then people quickly learn and they go, whoa, and they go running back to the hills of corporate America because they're like, this is not what I was looking for. And so really getting that out to people and making sure that they understand, eyes wide open. And sometimes I have to prop them open and say, this is what we're looking at here. And yes, it's great. It's thrilling. It's exhilarating. It sounds great when you tell people, right? But at the end of it, it's all on you to make this happen.
Yeah. No, and that's extremely important. That inability to see the future, right? And then no one has the ability to see the future, but it doesn't affect anyone as much as it affects small business owners. Honestly, I mean, obviously the people who are out there, in effect, in Ukraine, obviously that's different, right? They're obviously being affected more than we are, but financially, in terms of impact across the world, like it impacts the whole landscape of things, and business owners feel that no matter whether you're in a pandemic, whether there's a war across the world, whether gas prices go up and down, employment costs go up and down. Those are things that we really, really feel. It's like you're almost like you're in the bowels of the ship. You're feeling every single, every single wave as it comes and hits the ship as we're going through this. But you got to push through, and that's the difference between successful business owners and non-successful business owners. And I want to go back to something you mentioned about the folks who are introverts versus extroverts. It's not. I mean, I don't think you meant to do this, but for those out there who are listening who are introverts, it's not about being an introvert or extrovert necessarily, but it is a consideration. It's a lot more energy you have to expend as an introvert than an extrovert who loves to go out there and meet people and actually gets energy from that, right? I know some really great business owners who are extroverts or introverts, but they expend a lot more energy to do that, right? Because they have to expend a lot
Absolutely.
more energy, and you got to plan for
Yeah.
that.
And
So
yes,
it
and
is needed.
sometimes
Yeah.
it can be super draining for people if they have
Mhm.
a specific type of personality and they have to sit there and really gear themselves up to be around people and to be, putting on that energy. And sometimes people just don't have what it takes to have that energy and to keep that energy going. And that's what I meant by that.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to clarify because I know you didn't mean that
Yeah,
they couldn't.
no,
That was, yeah,
excellent.
takes consideration for sure. So Lisa, in your journey, how'd you even, you told me the part of the beginning started of owning the business and then kind of switching over this. How'd you know this was the right move for you in terms of being that franchise consultant for folks?
So when I had my franchise, I mentioned that, I was one of the first, and I loved working with the new franchise owners. And there's something in franchising called validation, where prospective franchisees can call and speak to the owners and talk to them and get their opinion about, what it is that you're doing, and to talk to them about the financials and, really do more of a deep dive. And I loved doing that. And I would spend, an hour with the people. And my franchisor was like, you don't have to spend that kind of time. And I'm like, no, these people are really looking at something that's very serious. And I'm taking it very seriously. And I appreciate that they're taking their time. So of course I want to speak to them. And I think it was probably 2-ish years before the pandemic. I had said to my husband, whatever this is that I'm doing, I love this. Like my business was on autopilot at that point. It was going, it was humming along. It was great. But I spent an inordinate amount of time with everyone else in my system and working with them and helping them. And I said, this is what I need to be doing next. This is it. And so I made a plan that I was like, okay, at year 8, I'm going to sell my business and then I'm going to head off into this path. And like I said, it all kind of just didn't happen on my timeline. But yes, it's exactly a dear friend of mine. She said, everything that you have been through, your years in corporate America, all the way through being a business owner, losing your business, she goes, it all led you to this point. And I was like, you know what? You're right. 100%. Helping people and also watching people fail in my franchise. I was really, I was really shocked by that, because I was like, I'm not smarter than they are. Like, why are they failing? And I started really zeroing in on that. And I started seeing patterns of different things with different people. And so I put all of that into the consultancy to say, these are a lot of the reasons why I saw people failing. Boom, boom, boom. And really explore that with people.
Yeah. No, I love that so much, because again, it's a combination of the self-awareness piece of you being understanding like, hey, this is what something I really love doing and I'm willing to shift the gears and do that. And the other thing is that, again, the opportunity kind of coincided with that hard work and with that self-awareness, right? Because if you're not self-aware enough to realize that opportunity is there, you're not going to get it, right? And that's a really cool thing that happens there. So I love that. So Lisa, we're wrapping up a little time here, but I wanted, before I always wrap up with this question. What was the most influential for you, book, TV show / movie, or person in your life, or all three if you want to go through that? But in terms of your journey.
So in terms of my journey, I'm going to say it would have to be my dad, because my father, and we always go to our parents, but my dad worked in corporate America and he was doing the whole thing. He was in publishing, traveled the world. I didn't get to see him much when I was younger, and he had a health scare. And my grandfather offered him his business, and it was an upholstering company. It's a blue collar, like upholstery, like, really get your hands dirty kind of business, like literally. And my dad didn't know anything about it. And he sat there and he moved the family across the country to start a business that he knew nothing about, and provided for the family until he retired, and helped get us all to where we needed to be. And I look back at that with such awe and amazement. And it was a really difficult type of business, because upholstering is it's a famine / starving / maybe now and then you're going to eat kind of business. And especially as we started becoming more and more disposable in our society, he started seeing more and more of that, where people weren't holding on to things, and, it meant something, and, you want to recover it. But to sit there and watch what he did, and took such a risk and such a chance, all because he didn't want to deal with the stress anymore of what was happening to him in the corporate world, and risk having a widow and, having his kids not have a dad. And he threw it all on the line. And to me, I'm like, wow, I didn't appreciate it at the time. I got ripped away from my neighborhood and my friends and everything else. But I look back at that now, and it's definitely shaped the course of what I do, 4,000% for sure.
That's amazing. I love that story, for many reasons, but that is extremely inspiring. And again, the courage it takes to do that, right? The courage, the grit, like you said, and to work through that, to commit to that, and then make it happen, right? Especially when you think back then, there was no social media, there was no like technology solutions. That you had to be out there and like physically out there meeting people all the time. There was no Zoom opportunity to like network
there was no
online.
GPS. So he had to do his estimates at night, and he had to sit there with a map trying to find where he was going. Like, I sit there thinking about that. I'm like, oh my gosh. But yeah. And he did it for decades, and he did it really well. Like he
Yeah.
did it really well. It was super hard for him and he gave up a lot because of what he had done. But at the same time, he's still with me today. Thank God. So yeah, it's all good.
That's awesome. I love that so much. Thanks so much, Lisa, for sharing that. And that's a really inspiring story, honestly, too. So everyone, if you do have anything that you want to talk to Lisa about in terms of franchises, if you're curious about franchise consulting, or if you want to get a franchise yourself, Lisa's a great resource. She's amazing, and obviously she cares about what she does, which makes the difference between her and someone else who's just a random franchise consultant out there. So please feel free to reach out to her. Her contact information will be in the description box below. Lisa, again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today and talk with everybody else. If you like the video, everybody hit subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment below. Let us know what you thought. Lisa, thanks again. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much, Drew. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. See you guys. Take care.